Hey, welcome to You Gotta Be Kidding Me, episode 7. This part looks at the paracellular shunt and the thick ascending limb of the loop of Henle in more detail and the electrogenic transport kind of stuff. So this is basically your movement of calcium, magnesium, potassium, and also a little bit of sodium that we talked about via the paracellular route in the previous video. Essentially, most of the key ideas have already been covered. This is kind of just to make sense of some of the numbers if you're struggling. No, this is not a very high yield topic, so to be honest, if you're already struggling with a workload, I wouldn't waste your time watching this, but if you want to make sense of the numbers, then we'll do that. All right. So we're talking about our thick ascending limb of your loop of Henle. Remember, stuff in your lumen ends up in your urine if it's not reabsorbed. Here's your interstitium of your medulla, which gets salty. Here's your epithelial cell of your thick ascending limb. And we've got our sodium potassium antiporter on the basolateral membrane. Basically, for the mass part of this paracellular bit, it's irrelevant. I'm not exactly sure why, but you don't really need to worry about it. Okay, we've also got our main channel, which is our NKCC2 channel. And this takes up sodium, 2 chlorides, and K+. But remember, K+, a lot of it kind of enters back into the lumen via the ROM-K channel. So essentially the NKCC2 is a fancy Na plus 2Cl minus co-transporter. Obviously, some K plus is reabsorbed. Remember, 15% of K plus is reabsorbed in the thick ascending limb. Okay. Now, on your basolateral membrane, our first channel we'll talk about is your chloride channel. So chloride comes in via the transcellular route via NKCC2, and it needs to be dumped out into the interstitium. And so this occurs via your channel with the horrible name. It's your basolateral chloride channel. It's aka CLC-KB Barton. Barton, remember, is the little subunit that kind of helps this channel out. This guy here, this channel, has an equilibrium voltage of minus 30 millivolts. Remember, we find out the equilibrium voltage of this stuff by the Nernst equation. Okay, and your other channel, I didn't mention this in the previous video. I remember I did say that 15% of K plus is reabsorbed in the thick ascending limb. So it would make sense that basolaterally there's also a K plus channel, even though a lot of it exits back into the lumen again via the ROM-K. There is also a basolateral K plus channel. Okay, what's the VEQ of K plus channels? You should know this. It's minus 90 millivolts. You should know this from your cardio stuff and action potentials. Okay, so if you look at your basolateral side, what is your overall equilibrium voltage going to be? Well, it's going to be somewhere between minus 90 and minus 30. So almost like an average, except it's not quite average because the overall kind of effect also depends on permeability as well as the voltage. So we know it's going to be between minus 30 and minus 90, but it's not exactly going to be minus 60 halfway between them. In fact, it's slightly more towards the K plus side. So overall, it's minus 70 millivolts. So remember I said it's not an exact average because permeability of the ions also plays a part in this. Okay, so our basolateral potential difference is minus 70 millivolts. What about our luminal side? So remember our ROM-K channel, which dumps K plus back into the lumen. What's the VEQ of this? Well, this is a K plus channel as well, so it's going to have the same VEQ as this, right? So all K plus channels have this VEQ of minus 90 millivolts. That's not the whole story though. So what's the overall voltage of this side and this side? Ignoring the NKCC2 just for now. Well, what we're going to do is, because these channels are facing opposite directions, you subtract them from each other. So what you do is you do minus 70, minus, and then minus 90. So you're subtracting both of them together. And you end up with 20 millivolts on the luminal side. So in your luminal, your potential difference is 20 millivolts. Okay, but we didn't talk about our NKCC2 channel. So far we've got like a positive luminal build-up of luminal potential difference. Okay, what about our NKCC2? This removes some positive ions. So we have a build-up of positive charge here, but NKCC2 is going to remove some positive ions. So therefore, it's going to bring it closer back to 0 again, because we're removing more positives. So by removing positives, we're getting further away from 20 and closer to 0. So that's what happens. Therefore, the outside becomes less positive relative to the inside of the membrane. But also remember, more chloride ions are removed as well. So it's not going to be 0 exactly, because there's still overall a higher amount of sodium ions. Okay. So what we're saying here is we're going like closer to the 0 side, but it's not going to be 0 because we have more chloride ions removed than sodium ions. So there's still more positive charge, but it's smaller than it's smaller than plus 20. What is that number here? That overall voltage is 8. Okay. Why? Because we've removed some sodium, and so we've removed some of the positive charge, so therefore it's close to 0, but it's not, it's not as low because more chloride ions are removed. So there's still a buildup of there's still a buildup of positive charge on the luminal membrane. So this basically causes the paracellular movement. Remember, the kidney doesn't like positive charge, or it doesn't like a buildup of charge. And in this case, it doesn't like the buildup of positive charge, so it wants to get rid of it. Therefore, it sets up a paracellular shunt to get rid of excess positive charge. Therefore, ions such as calcium, potassium, magnesium, and sodium are able to pass through claudins in your transepithelial route. Sorry, in your paracellular route, not transepithelial, is this way. Your ions here are able to pass through via your paracellular route via claudins to kind of help balance this positive charge.